Welcome to the Rusted Garden. Today's video is all about watering. I get asked that question all the time and it's just too hard to answer because there's too many variables. So we're going to talk about principles for watering, your ground beds, first half of the video, containers, the second half of the video, and I'm going to show you really how to figure out how many inches of water to give each plant per week based on temperature. So let's get started with the ground beds. Before we get started, I want to give you a couple tips on spraying when the temperatures get up into the 90 degrees. If you're looking for a garden YouTube channel that doesn't run any ads, I'm working with All America Selections on their YouTube channel. It's called All America Selections Flowers and Vegetables. I'm doing garden videos there. They don't run YouTube ads, so you can go there, get all the information you want for gardening without having to watch ads. Now, when it gets up to 90 degrees, the sprays that you used, neem oil, peppermint oil, baking soda spray, sulfur spray, soapy water spray, become more dangerous because the heat affects your leaves, and the sprays that you used when it was in the 70s and 80s could damage your plants. So a couple things I recommend is, one, try and cut back on your spraying if you can, because you're layering oils, baking soda, different things onto your plant leaves, and now you have 90+ degree temperatures. So what can you do? You can actually come in and spray, say you have an aphid issue with your tomato plants, rather than using soapy water all over the place. Before you water them, get in and just spray your leaves down. That will knock a lot of aphids down. And aphids are weak, so they will fall to the ground. They're not going to be able to get back up there. It helps you control the population. All you're doing is putting water on your plants. And do that several times. You can do that for spider mites under your cucumbers. And you can use water as a way to reduce insects on your plants, and hopefully the good bugs come in and take care of them. The other thing is, if you have your hose sitting out a long time in the heat, don't come and spray your leaves right away, because you almost have not boiling water, but you have really hot water in the hose from the solar energy of the sun. So make sure you let it cool off. Alright, so that's a couple tips for spraying and just being cautious during the 90+ degree temperatures. What we're going to do is I'm going to explain to you first, how do you figure out how much to give each plant. And the general rule of thumb is 1 inch of water per plant per square foot. That is 1 square foot. Let's see if I can get the blue in there without the white washing it out. That is 1 square foot. Alright, and I'm going to use that in a second with a bucket so you can figure out how much is 1 inch of water. So in 1 square foot, when you have cool weather, you want to give each plant square foot around the plant, 1 inch of water when it's cool. When it gets to 80+ degrees, 2 inches of water per square foot or per plant. When it's 90+ degrees, 3 inches per square foot per plant. And general watering, when it's cool temperatures, it's 1 to 2 waterings weekly. When it's 80, it's 2 to 3 waterings weekly. When it's 90, it's 3 to 4 waterings weekly. And that's for your ground beds, for your raised beds. And this is per plant. Now, I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you, so I wanted to take a second to really explain this part, because I don't want it to get lost in the video. We're talking about 1 inch of water per week when it's cool. We're talking about 2 inches of water per week when it's 80+ degrees. We're talking 3 inches of water per week when it's 90+ degrees. So when you're going to water, it's always 1 inch. It's not 3 inches when it's 90 degrees. You don't give 3 inches at once. You're giving 3 inches over the week's time. So when it's 90+ degrees, you're watering 3 to 4 times weekly. Each watering is 1 inch of water, and I'm going to show you how to measure that in your bucket and understand how much water comes out of your hose. So when it's cool, it's 1 inch 1 to 2 times a week. When it's 80+, it's 1 inch of water 2 to 3 times per week. When it's 90+, it's 1 inch of water 3 to 4 times per week. I don't want you to look at this and say 3 inches when it's 90 degrees, so it's 3 inches 3 to 4 times, that's 9 to 12 inches of water. It's not. It's always just 1 inch of water. And watering times, when it's warmer, the best time, and it's actually when it's hot, the best time to water is in the morning or towards the evening. Hope this clarifies the amount of water you give each plant at each watering. Theoretically, it should be 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch per the entire bed, but that's pretty time consuming, so we're just going to go per plant. Now, how do you figure out how much is 1 square foot of water. And the best way to do it is to use a 5-gallon bucket. That's a square foot. And you can see that a bucket is smaller than a square foot. On the inside, I measured a couple of inches. You can see 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inches, 4 inches. And the reason you do that is you want to know each hose is different. Like I said, there's a lot of different variables. So, taking account for the space the bucket doesn't cover, we're going to take this to 2 inches, and this will approximate 1 inch per square foot. So we're going to take this to 2 inches. Fill up your bucket and count 1001, 1002, and I know to get to 2 inches in the bucket, which we're going to equate to 1 inch per square foot, takes me 10 seconds. And just to show you how much water it is, let's just pour that. See if I can do it one-handed. Pour that into the plant. And that's about how much you're giving each plant at the watering. So it's 90 plus degrees today. So I'll be doing this 3 times a week. 1 inch of water per plant. And then for the hose, now that I know that it's 10 seconds, let's come over to my beefsteak that I'm using to challenge Callie Kim to our beefsteak grow-off. I would just count. Let's do 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006, 1007, 1008, 1009, 1010. That's about 1 inch per plant per square foot. And that's great for the, watering today. And again, it's 90 degrees. I would water 3 or 4 times a week. And you're going to vary that based on if it's full sun, if it's cloudy, if you get a little bit of rain, if you get nights that are maybe extra cool, or if the temperatures come down a couple of times. So again, it's principles. So I would go through this bed and hit each plant. There are 8 plants in there with 10 seconds of watering from my hose, because I know that 10 seconds will give me about 1 inch of water per plant per square foot. So that's, 10 times 8, that's 80 seconds. We're talking about 2 minutes. Now, because theoretically you should be watering each square foot in the raised bed, with 1 inch of water, and these are what, I think this might be 6 feet or 8 feet long, 4 feet wide, you end up with like 24 to 32 square feet. You'd have to times that by 10, and maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes. But you could just do this right in the middle of the tomatoes, spray another 10 seconds. And the reason you're doing that, especially with tomato plants and most plants, they have surface root systems. So you want to soak down the surface nicely. You want to, between the plants, because they're all sharing that area, and you want to give each plant 1 inch of water. Then I would come in between the next group of 4, do 10 seconds in there, and then I would go down to there and do 10 seconds. And that will be plenty of water for my raised bed or my ground bed. Now, if you're concerned that you don't think they have enough water, it's better to overwater than to let your plants dry out. You can't really harm plants in your ground beds by giving them too much water. The problem comes when you let this bed dry out completely, the whole surface is dry, the tomato roots don't have any real water, and then you put in so much water, the plants suck it up really quickly and you get tomatoes that crack. So by doing this, on a schedule, kind of following these general guidelines, you'll be able to give even water to your tomato plants. They won't crack as much, and to the rest of your garden. And then again, if you're not getting any rain, you're going to have to do a little more often. If you're getting a good amount of rain, you're going to have to, ease back on the watering. But you have to judge the rain by really looking at it. Is it getting 1 inch? Are you getting a good hour's worth of rain? Not just a quick storm or a little sprinkle, but a good hour or 2 of nice rain that gives your garden that 1 inch of water. Okay, let's go up to the containers. We'll talk about watering them. Now, containers, of course, come in various sizes, so we have smaller containers here. When your plants are smaller, it's in the 70s, it's cool. twice a week probably is fine. As your plants get bigger and the temperature goes up, especially when you get into the 90s, you may have to water these once a day. This is kale growing in a 2.5 gallon pot. There's a hole down there, and well, let's just take a look. You take a look at the top. You can see all the surface roots. This is completely dry. As you dig down further, it's still pretty dry, but you see there's some moisture. So the timing is right. This is not completely dried out. You never want to let your containers completely dry out or you damage the root systems. So you're going to water really until you see water come all the way down and come out the drainage hole. It's a good amount of water. I actually know as that settles in, there we go, it starts dripping out. A little bit too much. You just want to get it so that it trickles out there. Now when you're feeding your container plants, because we're watering like this, because rain comes, a lot of times you wash out a lot of the soluble nutrients. That's why I recommend feeding them on a schedule of every 10 to 14 days based on the size of your plants. We have basil doing really well in here. You're going to again want to soak it down, and once you get the hang of it, you can kind of get used to knowing how much water it takes for that to soak down to the bottom of the container. And again, when it's 90 degrees plus, day after day, you may have to do this every day. Okay, so as we come across here, I have a couple containers in here. This is about 5 gallons. That one I think is about 10 gallons. And you're going to do the same thing, is you would fill this up. And you know, at least with this hose, 10 seconds is about 1 inch of water. And you would let that go until you know that the water's trickling out the hole, the drainage hole. Now, the difference is containers, the root systems can't go deep into the ground and grab that water that's, 2 feet down in the ground. So they dry out really, really quickly. More containers over here, just like the ones I just did. You may have to water them again every day, every other day when the temperatures get up to 80 degrees. All right, let's get up onto the deck and we'll talk more specifically about 5-gallon containers and larger containers. Container plants here are cucumbers, tomatoes, peppers. Everything that you see on these leaves, that is actually sulfur dust. I'll be doing a video on that. But the containers are watered based on plant size, how much each container holds, and the temperature. So when it's March, April, May, and you have smaller plants, you can probably water 1 to 2 times a week because the plants are smaller. As they get larger, you're going to have to water more frequently, and as the temperatures go up, and especially into the 90s with containers, you're going to probably have to water these once a day. When it gets really hot and the plants are really large, you may have to water twice a day. And I really recommend keep a journal, know when your temperatures roll in, and see what works best. Here, for example, 2 of the same size containers, both cucumbers. The cucumber on the right needs to get watered more often. They've been watered already because it's been so hot, but again, there's the drainage hole. About 10 seconds of water will give me the inch of water per square foot, which is usually enough, like for a container this size. And I know that that's about enough water to drain through and then to start coming out the drainage hole. There's a couple strategies, like this hole is about 1 inch up, so this is going to create a reservoir of water there. So that will help your plants out, especially when they're larger. If you have holes directly on the bottom of your container, you don't have that reservoir, so you may have to water a little bit more often. And the general theme, just like the paper I showed you in the beginning, as temperature goes up, that's the general frequency you have to do with your ground-based garden and your container garden. With containers, because they don't have the deep roots getting into the ground, when it's 95 plus 100 degrees, you may have to water these in the morning and the evening again. And again, you're better off overwatering, as long as you have drainage holes, always have drainage holes or your roots are going to rot, than to let these dry out and risk it. Because once tomatoes get root damage, they can't pull in nutrients, they can't pull in calcium, you start getting blossom end rot. And again, if you are going to need to put sprays on your plants, try and ease them back as much as possible. Any foliar feeds, pour directly into the roots. Use mulch that helps contain water. And for instance, it rained last night, so this looks a little bit more like a spray, but I'm using sulfur powder instead of a spray on the leaves. And the powder seems to be a little more gentle on the leaves when it gets up into the 90 degrees. But these are the general principles for watering your garden. You're going to have to adapt based on temperature, container size, the amount of rain you get, whether or not you mulch, but just keep a journal, keep track of it, and you'll get the hang of it. Now, last thing is, because you're watering more in, say, July and August in Maryland Zone 7, you're going to be more quickly washing out the water-soluble fertilizer. So that's why I often recommend slow and low. If you're going to use the chemical type fertilizers, quarter strength, half strength, you don't need to put that all in there. Just a steady supply of fertilizer is all your container plants need. And you might have to do it a little more frequently when your plants are starting to produce. I mean, look how nicely these tomatoes are developing. That Rutgers, I think, has like 18 tomatoes on it. When you're watering more, you may have to be feeding more. Okay, hope you enjoyed the video. Please check out my seed shop at www.therustedgarden.com. You can find peppermint oil there, rosemary oil, neem oil, calcium nitrate, all kinds of things that will help your plants, along with all kinds of different seeds. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great 4th of July.